Superman is one of the most famous superheroes ever to be created. Over the years, many clones of the superhero have shown up in alternate universes as well as the main universe, but none come close to the power of real Clark Kent like the clone created by Darkseid on Earth 2, known as Brutal. Brutal was by far the best clone of the Kryptonian to come out of the pages of DC. So without further ado, let's jump right into the video to learn more about Brutal. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. The Saga of Darkseid's Superman Clone. The way things began on Earth 2 in New Age 52 wasn't very similar to that on Prime Earth. Unlike the Prime Earth, Earth 2 didn't have as many superheroes to protect it. Although a group of superheroes was there to fight evil, they came to be known as Wonders. Justice League, as we know, was nowhere to be seen. The Wonders brought about world peace in the absence of the Justice League, establishing an earthly utopia that would not survive. Most of the Wonders gave their lives in combat against Darkseid during the incursion of Earth 2 by the oppressive ruler of Apokolips. Superman seemed to be annihilated by a device that subverted his Kryptonian nature and set off a powerful solar energy explosion. Superman was one of the Wonders who perished. However, his narrative would not finish here. Superman was resurrected when Darkseid was able to retrieve his dead body and deliver it to Desaad, his primary torturer and scientist. Then, using the Man of Steel's DNA, the mad scientist made a clone who would pledge his allegiance to Darkseid. The experiments rendered the real Superman helpless, but they produced a nearly perfect clone known as Brutal. All of Kal's memories, including his childhood with the Kents, were carried by this clone, but it doesn't seem to remember Val-Zod in any way. The clone was given a mask to conceal his actual identity and put under Steppenwolf's control. Steppenwolf's soldiers in Derain are getting ready for battle with the World Army, which they expect any moment. They do not, however, anticipate Green Lantern, the Flash, and Dr. Fate's unexpected onslaught. As soon as Steppenwolf learns about the latest assault by the Wonders, he sends out his hounds to meet the threat. The Wonders are startled as a shower of arrows and bullets decimates the majority of Derain's army as it approaches them. The World Army has come. It is Wesley Dodds and his Sandmen. The Atom and Red Arrow, a newcomer, were also there. Khan's troops, the Sandmen, are not happy with the Wonders' gung-ho approach, which was rendered their covert strike ineffective. The Wonders will follow the Sandmen's example as long as they don't try to kidnap or betray them, says Alan, despite the high tensions between them. Dodds concurs, but an unexpected explosion among his troops causes them to focus on three newcomers, warriors dispatched by Steppenwolf known as Hunger Dogs, to deal with the superhuman menace. Brutal rammed Green Lantern into the ground. Beguiler reflected Dr. Fate's most potent strike back at him. Bedlam was the first to drive the Atom insane. He had assaulted Jay while in that state, rendering him unconscious. After that, Brutal punched him out. After that, all the forces of good were defeated, but for some unknown reason, they have been left alive by the Hunger Dogs. On Derain, all of the World Army arrives to combat Steppenwolf, who is waiting for them to arrive with his three Hunger Dogs. They decimate the World Army troops as a unit, forcing Mr. Terrific and Amar Khan to escape from General Foster's ship. In order to save Amar, Mr. Terrific uses his flight pack. However, as they reach safety, they discover countless dead soldiers surrounding them. The World Army super soldiers and the Wonders of the world find themselves still alive in the meantime, but Sandman soon learns that the assault of Derain has ended in failure, and their instructions are to evacuate everyone they can, except for Green Lantern, who immediately confronts Steppenwolf to engage in a physical battle, while they work together to complete the rescue operation. Brutal uses his Omega Beams to blast Green Lantern from behind, and he collaborates with Steppenwolf to beat Alan Scott into submission, while also taking down the Atom. When Steppenwolf notices that the reporters are still recording what is happening, he turns to them and informs the inhabitants of Earth that he is now their lord. But before he can finish his sentence, Brutal blasts him to death while calling him stupid and an idiot. Then, out of nowhere, Brutal's armor shreds, revealing Superman, who raises his fist and cries out, "Hail Darkseid," before launching into a devastating rampage. Sam Lane and Bob Crane are getting ready to launch Red Tornado online as this Superman returns to Earth and unleashes the fury of the Apocalyptian troops on humanity. Although Khalid Ben Hassin is unsure if magic would be effective, he thinks it may be able to stop Brutal. Nevertheless, he gallantly dons the Helmet of Fate to take the form of Dr. Fate and challenges Brutal to a fight. However, Superman has learned what the heroes are up to and knocks Dr. Fate to the ground, shattering the helmet. Before Khalid is crushed to death, Jay Garrick scurries to save him. To give the World Army and the Wonders time to flee, Jay Garrick decides he would try to divert Brutal. Mr. Terrific observes that Amar Khan has been impaled by a piece of metal from the fallen rubble as the World Army prepares to evacuate Arkham Base, while Sandman observes that Terry Sloan is unharmed. Jay Garrick chooses to hurl a pebble at Brutal outside in an effort to grab his attention. He moves directly towards Jay's direction in response to the taunt. Jay Garrick tries to outrun Brutal by using all of his speed abilities, but he soon falls, and Brutal grabs him by the ankle and breaks it to stop him from fleeing. Sandman uses his teleportation skills to escape the Arkham Base, with Amar Khan in tow, but Terry Sloan and Mr. Terrific can't go very far before Superman arrives and wreaks havoc. Brutal commands Bedlam to let the horde of parademons out by opening the gates. Brutal carries Mr. Terrific, Terry Sloan, and Flash to Washington, D.C., and dropped them on the White House lawn before pulling the Washington Monument out of the ground and ramming it into the White House. The inhabitants of Earth are informed by Superman that Apocalypse is disintegrating and that their world is being set up to replace it. Bedlam informs Terry Sloan and Mr. Terrific that he wants their assistance in building a boom tube that would be big enough to send Earth into Apocalypse orbit as he attempts to rally the populace behind his cause. Mr. Terrific declines to assist, but Bedlam asserts that he will use mind control to force them to assist him, whether they choose to or not. The destruction of all places of worship and every kind of shrine and monument devoted to the gods of Earth is being carried out by Brutal's army of parademons, while their respective religions are referred to as fictions. He enthusiastically participates in the cleansing of the anti-Darkseid protesters, reminding them there is only one Darkseid. While Superman is attacking the World Army's final command post in Moscow, Atom and Sandman are coordinating an evacuation of the staff. Superman uses his heat vision to rip Atom's right arm from his body before using it to knock the enormous hero down. Atom attempts to buy Sandman enough time to keep the gateway open for all the refugees that they can aid. The gateway is successfully closed by Sandman before Superman takes off. After departing from Moscow, Brutal encountered the Beguiler and learned about the Space Ark, which represented humanity's final chance for survival, while the surviving inhabitants of Earth were abandoned to perish. The clone resolved to make an example of Beguiler when he volunteered to destroy the ship. Then, in the vacuum of space, the clone began to shatter open the spacecraft, killing all the occupants. Bedlam contacted Superman after murdering all the passengers, and informed him that he had found Sloan was concealing a Kryptonian. Then, Brutal would go back to the place where they were detaining Sloan and try to question him, but he was interrupted by Dr. Bedlam, who disclosed that the Kryptonian's name was Val Zod, and that he was being kept at the Arkham Base of the World Army. Brutal observes Batman and believes him to be Bruce Wayne after viewing the footage of Val's escape. Brutal instructs Bedlam to send some parademons to Gotham with him since he thinks Val will be there. High above the Batcave, on a cliff, Lois gets Val ready for his maiden flight. Val falls into the trees below when Lois releases his hand to see how he would manage flying on his own. However, he stops in mid-air just above the tree tops rather than hitting the ground. When Hawkgirl eventually joins them, she and Lois both see an approaching parademon swarm as a potential threat. Although it doesn't take Lois long to spot Brutal within the swarm, she orders Val to flee, while she and Hawkgirl try to fend off the swarm for as long as they can. He flies directly by her, and she is momentarily distracted by his sight, which gives the parademons time to completely encircle her. When Superman spots Val, he immediately throws him to the ground, while a parademon injures Hawkgirl by biting off part of her left wing. After blasting her way out of the swarm, Hawkgirl is about to collapse to the ground until Lois saves her. When Lois shows up with Hawkgirl and exposes who she is, Brutal is prepared to pummel Val into submission. When Brutal notices Lois and the artificial body she is now using, he changes his mind. When he asks her how she came to be alive again, she replies that she has no idea, but then she is abruptly hit by a parademon energy beam, which infuriates Brutal to a point where he lashes out at the swarm with his heat vision, destroying anybody in close proximity. Val gets up off the ground and commands Brutal to leave her alone. Lois instructs Val and Hawkgirl to flee while she stays with Brutal to try to reason with him. When Brutal and Lois arrive at the Kent home in Smallville, he tells her that his parents would be shocked to see her. Jonathan and Martha Kent are first alarmed to see Brutal and Lois, but Martha makes an effort to be as amiable as she can and invites them inside. Brutal is contacted by Bedlam, who informs that he knows where the Wonders are hidden and instructs him to release the second wave as Martha Kent does her best to amuse her guests without being afraid of their presence. The Wonders in the Batcave receive Lois's transmission of what Superman is saying, which alerts them that they must leave as quickly as possible. When Brutal attempts to initiate a conversation during dinner and claims that the atmosphere is chilly, Jonathan Kent loses his cool. He is sick of running away in dread, and he won't buy into an old wives' tale, which is his son is a serial killer and his daughter-in-law is a brain inside a robot. When Jonathan expresses disdain for Brutal's pretense of respectability as a Darkseid messenger, Brutal uses heat vision to kill his father. For Lois, who is refusing to accept that the guy in front of her is her husband, this is the tipping point. Brutal yells that he is, but a telepathic communication from Bedlam informs him that the plot has been carried out. Brutal takes off after suddenly realizing who he is and the dreadful mission he is currently serving. Val-Zod knows the clone is not the actual Superman as they collide with one another, and Val is now sporting the House of El emblem. He understands that the clone's wounds around his eyes are actually skin fissures rather than scars. A shattered, haphazard entity with an inverted House of El emblem is revealed as he cracks the skin. What's left of the clone is destroyed by Lois, and it turns into dust. What makes Brutal so brutal? Brutal has powers similar to Superman, where he has superhuman strength, agility, speed, stamina, and reflexes. He also has X-ray vision and heat vision, which he often employs in his combat against his adversaries. Since he was a clone created by Desaad, his heat vision has an uncanny resemblance with Darkseid's Omega Sanction. Marvelous verdict. Brutal was almost a perfect clone of Superman, but lacked the most basic traits that made Kal-El Superman: empathy and compassion. He was also defeated by Val-Zod, proving that despite Desaad's best efforts, there was only one Superman. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.